What is up, everybody? Let's kick off again. I want to introduce you before we start to my friend Bob. Bob is genderless. Bob just listens to me and hopefully makes my voice less echoey and makes it sound good. And stupid Slack over there is just going to keep pinging, so I apologize. Shut up! Also, I want to pass a quick kudos to the people at Apple for being so horrible in the products they build nowadays that the GarageBand I was recording this in crashed twice. So I've had to do this the third time. Each I've recorded 20 minutes long. So if anyone over here is watching this knows Tim Cook, please personally pass him this message and tell him to fix his shit. Now, that was passive aggressive, I'm so sorry. Now let's kick off. So this video is about building a startup in exactly 3 weeks. So how do we get that? It's gonna be exciting, fast and quick and very, very, very fast paced. Let's start. The first thing you need to do to build a startup in exactly 3 weeks is to go ahead and make sure you've got your landing page ready. The landing page needs to be built in a very quick utility software such as Landon, Instapage, landingpage.co. There's a multiple software set out there, Webflow as well as a product that you can use to go ahead and essentially get the landing page ready to go. Essentially what you're trying to do is get some quick messaging across talking about the problem and possible solution you're offering to your customers. Do not sell features. You're not selling features and that's not what you're trying to do. So look into the PASO approach, PASO, which is problem. You're really trying to solve what the problem is. You're testing what the problem is. You're trying to reinforce that problem. Then you're offering a solution. And at the end of the case, you're also offering an outcome to the customer based upon the solution. The goal of this landing page that you're building is to go ahead and collect an email address, because that's what you're trying to do as your validation point, is collect email addresses and eventually target these individuals to speak to these people because they might be your first customers. Remember, it is difficult to do this thing and everyone thinks that building a landing page and talking about their problem and getting customers will be easy and that's the earliest we can validate. There's a lot of videos I've done about validation, check them out. However, what I think you need to be doing is, if you want to build this startup in 3 weeks, the goal of this initially is just to capture email addresses of people who are very, very curious about what your product is or want to use your solution. Now, the second thing for you to go ahead and do is, once you build this landing page, it should take a couple of hours, 6 to maybe 7 maximum. I'm really pushing it over there. You need to go ahead and push it up on Facebook groups as well as WhatsApp groups, Instagram groups, and tell people this is what you're trying to build, and really fix on your messaging, because that's the biggest issue that you're trying to solve over here. It's very difficult. It might be worth hiring a copywriter for $50 to $100 on Upwork.com to just make sure you've converted and covered the copy correctly to go ahead and help with that conversion into your email addresses. Now that's being done, the next thing I would suggest to do is run $50 or $25 budgets to just get Facebook ads going and talking about what your problem is and trying to get your customers via Facebook to convert and get some email addresses. You're not looking for too many, you're looking for maybe about 50 to 100 email addresses. Remember, the whole concept of getting this email address is just not to capture it, but you actually want to go ahead and nurture these people. You want to go ahead and share progress of your product as you build it for the next 3 weeks. Some of them will say no and unsubscribe, and that's perfectly fine, but what you need to do is you need to nurture these audiences. Remember, only 2.5% of your 100% audience range are going to be interested in your product to try it in the first time around. They're going to be the tech innovators. Don't expect a lot of volume, but the volume that you have, make sure you nurture and take care of it. Like I said, some people will leave, but most of them will stay, and by keeping them engaged and showing them the progress of the product will keep them very happy and excited and almost curious to see what you're going to do next. Now remember, the easiest way you can send them emails is by integrating the landing page software that I told you about, using apps like MailChimp, SendGrid, Twilio, or the many of email softwares that are out there. Lemlist is another one where you can simply integrate and send out emails. You can use Zapier as an interconnection to go ahead and move information across. Now, with that being said, let's go on to the second part. Now, an important part for you to actually build your product in exactly 3 weeks is to go ahead and rip your problem apart. And what I mean by ripping your problem apart is to go ahead and work out of the 50 things that you want to do, most likely you want to focus on just one thing, and that is going to be very difficult and an important exercise for you to do, and probably the most important exercise for you to do, so that you don't blow the scope up beyond 3 weeks. So work out that one problem. I'll give an example of Scenario. I'm obviously not trying to pitch it, but feel free to check out the links. Scenario is a startup that I'm building right now, and we've been doing it for a while, and it was very difficult for us to work out what that one problem that we wanted to solve was. There's so many problems to solve, and sometimes you might feel that you need to do everything in order to achieve a solution, but it's not correct. There's always one thing that you need to do. We're a decision context software. That means you want to give graphs meaning and information meaning. What that means is we just don't want to throw data at someone. We want to tell them what this data means and what it means to them in particular and what they can do with this. So not just give them information, but tell them what they can do with it and what it actually means to them, right? So, and it took a lot of energy and time and effort for us to get to that point. So, but it's important you get to that level, because then all the other features don't matter. And everything that you build in your product needs to be built around that one North Star and that one problem that you're trying to solve. So make sure you really rip into the problem and focus all your solutionisms around solving that one problem. You need to be okay with just making sure that your solution is not going to be complete. What that means is you need to be okay with having an incomplete product, and that's part and process of building an app in 3 and a bit weeks, 3 weeks, not 3 and a bit weeks. And that means that you need to accept the insecurities that you have with launching an incomplete application. And incomplete does not mean that it's not done. As long as it is solved what it's meant to do, it's complete. The other things like forget password, logad, all these other fancy features like email activation triggers, all that stuff, you can get to that later. The first thing you're trying to do is solve an action problem that customers are facing right now. And one thing that you need to focus on when you're in this build process is you need to do the least steps required to build the maximum output. And what I mean by that is you need to focus on ensuring everything that you're doing is as little as possible to build the maximum output, which means using APIs, using pre-built softwares, using scaffolding tools, anything that can essentially help automate the problem that you're trying to solve for in the intent that you want to solve it with. All right, so the next thing you need to jump onto after you've done this is go ahead and hire someone from Upwork or freelancer.com. These are freelancer marketplaces where you can hire designers for a reasonable price. Now find out what you want to get done and make sure that you build a scope for it. Literally just 2-3 days, that's all. And I've had this done before, so you can't come with an excuse saying, oh, 2-3 days. No, I've had full-on designs done for a product I want to be built in 2 to 3 days maximum. And that depends because I gave them such a concise and defined scope based upon the problem trying to solve. The problem's not them, it's you. You need to make sure you give them just enough and what is necessary and the problem you're trying to solve for to equate to just 2-3 days worth of work. An important part of trying to achieve this is to make sure that you're designing around the North Star. The North Star can be different things, whether that's actually, getting the customer to press a button, provide some information, get the aha moment of the product where they feel like, holy shit, this has solved something for me. Everything needs to be resolved and solved around that one thing. So make sure that when you're building your application, you're building towards that one point, right? And that one problem that you're trying to solve. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult for your designer to understand what they're trying to build for. And it's up to you to define that problem and build everything around that. Make sure that when you're making this design happen, you're talking to your designer, you're building up your tickets, either work with a developer that is a good friend, and hopefully you are a developer. What you're trying to do is you're going ahead and making sure the design is done with development in mind. And what that means is make sure you stress to the designer that you're working with that they need to build repeatable components that can be reused all across the place. And you do not want design that is different on each and every single page, because that is not what you're trying to solve for. You're not trying to solve for brand or aesthetics. You're trying to solve for a problem a customer faces. And remember, whilst you think this is a myth, if people face a problem and you're trying to give them a solution that is easy for them to use, they will go above and beyond to use it despite the difficulties that you're offering them on the path to get to that solution. Like your app might be shit, your things might be crappy, but it's all about net positive. If the problem they're facing is so annoying, they're happy to jump over the hurdles of your MVP product to actually get the solution you're offering them. So the next thing you need to do is set up a concrete to-do list. Each ticket in your to-do list. Look at tools like Trello or Asana, they're helpful, or even Zoho. Tools that essentially say, okay, every task that I'm doing, what is the reason behind each task? And that task needs to resolve to your North Star, that North Star that we just discussed about. So make sure everything that you're doing is built for a reason, and that reason is building that app in 3 weeks and solving the problem in 3 weeks time. Another thing you need to convince your designer or try to let your designer know is before they build the user interface, which is the paint part, just to give you the wireframes part. The wireframes part is going to help you as an engineer or help the engineer that you're going to hire build the API first whilst the design is being done. Remember, time is important. You've only got those 2 days should not be wasted. So get the designer to give you the wireframes at the flow at which the application is going to go, which they can do very quickly. Then use that to go ahead and start building the backend. When you're building the backend, make sure you spend time. This is the only time I'll say spend a little bit of time, maybe 3-4 hours building your pipeline, your CI/CD, so that when you deploy things, you can can deploy it really fast, because it will be a pain in the butt later on. And you want to make sure you remove all these annoyances at the beginning. So make sure you build that system where you can just push up really quickly, and it deploys into an ecosystem fast. Look at things like Docker. And this is one time I want to convince you and try put my energy out and say, please, I implore you not to use new tools or new softwares that you're not aware of because it's cool or it's recommended. Use things that you know really well, you're confident with, and you think you can build very fast. This is not a time for you to explore and come up with new concepts and patterns. You're trying to prove a point in 3 weeks. So just do things that you're confident with, because comfort comes with confidence. Confidence comes with the pace that you can actually develop or make someone develop with. So do not go with groundbreaking new stuff. Just use tools that are simple and tools that you're very familiar with. Now this section obviously goes without saying, make sure that you work like a crazy mother beep.
You're a smart motherfucker.
And what that means is you're working very hard this entire time period. 7, 14, 21 days is not a lot of time, and you're trying to race against time. Now, hopefully the design's been done for you, and once the design is given to you from your designer, make sure you need to go ahead and build an ecosystem that is component friendly. What I mean by that is, regardless of the front-end infrastructure that you're using, React, Vue, Meteor.js, I don't know what you're going to use, just make sure that everything is componentized, and make sure the library or front-end framework that you're using is componentizable. So what that means is, when you start your development, you're building individual components first. Those individual components need to be hard-coded, by the way. Don't think about integrating it to your backend at this point in time. Work with the front-end store, which is like Minimongo, Vuex, or Redux. For those who are engineering might know what this is. And essentially build hard-coded components that you can simply drag and drop across the entire flow of a product. Remember, building that component library is going to be pivotal to ensure that you get your product ready at a fast pace. Those component libraries can be like, just building a text field, building a drop down, building, a chart that is commonly used. And this is going to test to see how your designers actually design this product for you, because if they've done hodgepodge everywhere, then you can't build components. So make sure that this is like a litmus test for you to work out whether the designer's done a good job, for you to make sure everything's componentizable. Everything can be reading data straight from like the store on the front end, or you're hard coding all this data so that when time comes to integrate to the back end, it's a simple switch across. Build components. Components need to be drag and droppable, and just pop them in across the entire application. But that is pivotal. Again, repeating like a parrot, make sure you get those design components ready, and you follow design-driven development, right? Because we're humans, we're visual creatures, and by building that ecosystem first, it'll be very easy for you to build and launch that application fast. The last part is, obviously, when you're in this rush of building everything, don't just launch a product without the ability of knowing what your customers are actually experiencing. The goal of this is to improve your MVP and see if people are actually solving the problems. You're actually solving the problems people want you to solve. So using tools like Hotjar, Google Analytics, Mixpanel, there's millions of tools out there that help you work with analytics. Work out and see how your customers are interacting with your product, because that is going to make the biggest difference down the road. The tools that I use that are very easy to combine and work out what bugs are that your customer might face, because you're going to face a lot of issues when you build something so fast. I use a combination of FullStory or Hotjar, Sentry, and Slack. Whenever there's an error, Sentry pings the issue to Slack. I use the IP address and I compare it with FullStory or Hotjar, and that way I can see what issue the customer has faced, and I can repeat it and therefore resolve it. Because a lot of the time it's like, oh, I don't know what the customer did to repeat these steps. I need to make sure this happens. So do not launch blind. It's very important for you to go ahead and get that feedback from the customer. Nurture your audience, talk to them, use tools like Drift or Intercom to have that direct chat with your customer. It's very important that you pamper your audience that you've been speaking to for the past 3 weeks, sending them messages of how your app is growing and so on and so forth. And to be honest, my friends, that's all it takes. 3 weeks and you built a startup. Even if it's the most difficult company in the world, I'm pretty confident if you do it right, you can break it down and solve one problem that is important for you to solve, maybe across multiple problems, to get that app be validated. Now we're done, and hopefully you kick this off and use this as an energy to start your new company. Make sure you post your comments of your startups that you're building after you watch this video. Check out the previous videos that we've done, and press that like button, because it really helps push this video out and hopefully help other people who are struggling to know how long it takes to build an application. Take care.